Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea podcast here on this beautiful Wednesday. I'm so glad you guys decided to make me a part of your day. I am humbled that you would want to spend some of your very precious few hours here with me today. I'm pretty excited today because there's a little movie coming out that I didn't think much of at first, but then I saw the trailers. And I absolutely love the trailers. It's the new Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson movie, The Hitman's Bodyguard. So I've seen the trailers to this movie, and the movie, I think the trailers look bonkers good. Seriously, I think it looks really good. Now, I don't know how good the movie's actually going to end up being, because we've seen lots of great trailers to bad movies, but I think the trailer looks pretty damn good. So I'm going to go see that movie tonight. And hopefully I'll have a review for the movie up tonight as well. Make sure you come back to my channel a little bit later tonight and check that out. Another post I'm putting up today, I mentioned this on social media yesterday, but I've been planning it for a while, is that I'm going to put up a little video later today on me ranking the top 5 best trilogies of all time. So I put out a tweet and a Facebook message last night asking people, what do you think my order is going to be? And I probably got like 400 replies when you can count Twitter and Facebook, and none of them were correct. Like, as far as being exactly correct, none of them were exactly correct, which is kind of funny when you think about it that way. So got a whole bunch of that kind of stuff going. Now, here's how today's show's going to go, okay? If you guys want to get a question or topic into me for the John Campea podcast, just email anytime at thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. Just email me at thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. And then I pick 6 questions out every day. And then after we do those 6 questions, we go to the live chat board. Now, a lot of people have been asking me, where has the audio feed been? And I'll probably mention this a couple of times over the next week, just so the message gets out there. But I made the decision like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, to kill the audio only podcast version of it because it was costing me money and it wasn't generating me any money. And now that I do this full time, I can't be putting time and energy and money into something that doesn't, make money for me back in return. That's just not smart. But then I got talked into doing my Patreon stuff, and I decided putting out the audio only feed for my Patreon supporters was a good perk for Patreon supporters. So if you're really super interested in just the audio only podcast, but you've always got the video here for free, then go check out my Patreon page. A link to my Patreon page is in the description below. Now, one other thing I want to mention before we get to the questions here, and by the way, if you want to know what the questions are today, look in the description of this video. I put all the questions down in there. Something I've been getting asked a lot is, what equipment do I use to do the John Campea podcast live? Because, for a live YouTube podcast, one guy doing it by himself, this looks pretty good, right? I mean, it's not studio quality, but it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to let you know the equipment that I use right now real quick in case you want to try doing something like this. And I always like to help other people get their own YouTube stuff going. I don't see it as competition. I see it as enriching the online fan community. And that's the most important thing. So I have 3 main pieces of gear that I use just besides my computer. Okay, so I use my computer, obviously. And you don't need the same setup I have. I have a pretty beefy computer, but you don't need a computer this beefy. And I got a bunch of big, huge monitors. You don't need that. So here's what I got. 4 pieces of equipment. Number 1 is the computer. That is USB capable, but that's every computer today. The second really important thing that I use is a program called Wirecast. It costs a little bit of money. I think it's a couple of $100. But with what Wirecast can do, it's pretty spectacular for what you get for the price. But there are other programs you can use, and I think there's even a way to use YouTube to just stream live yourself. But I use Wirecast to do my live streaming and for bringing up little graphics, like, for instance, my lower third. Like, I can bring my lower third up and down. I can bring up pictures up and down, all that kind of stuff. So it's called Wirecast, 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 okay? So that's my software that I use on the computer. Now, as far as microphone goes, audio is the most important thing. Audio is the most important thing. It is more important than the quality of the video. A lot of people look at me like I'm crazy when I say that, but it's absolutely true. Nothing will make your video feel cheap more than cheap audio. So I spent about $75. I got it on special. I think at most it costs like $100, but I think I got this on special for like $75. I'll just pick it up here. It is the Blue Yeti is the name of it. So Blue, B-L-U-E, Yeti, Y-E-T-I. Just get it on Amazon. You know what? I'm going to do that for you guys right now. I'm going to pull up an Amazon page. Amazon Blue Yeti. I'm going to tell you right now how much it costs. Blue Yeti microphone on Amazon right now. Okay, it's not on sale anymore. It's $129. But you know what? There's another version of the Blue microphone made by the same company. It's called the Blue Snowball. And I used to use the Blue Snowball. It's also a very good mic, costs $50. So pretty cheap, right? Okay, now what do I use for camera? Do I use a DSLR? Do I use like some 4K camera? Nope, I'll show you what I use. I use this. This is the camera. I mean, it's not this exact one, but it's its identical twin brother that I'm using here. This is called the Logitech C920. Logitech C920. It's about $60 or $70, maybe even cheaper than that. It's a wonderful little webcam capable of 720 and 1080 video, high def video. It's wonderful. It's great. It's flexible. It's great to use for this sort of thing. So there you go. I use Wirecast. I use the Blue Yeti microphone, and I use a cheap little webcam. It's not that cheap, but it's called the Logitech C920, and that's the gear. And then it's up to you to be creative and make good content. Remember, your gear will not make good content. Gear does not make good content. Content creators make good content. So that's the most important thing. But if you're asking me for the little bells and whistles and doodads about how to actually do it, there you go. Computer, Wirecast. Half decent mic, get the Blue Snowball if you only want to spend about $50. And then about for $50, $60, or $70, you get a Logitech C920 and you're good to go. So anyway, I hope that didn't bore a lot of you. It's just that a lot of people have been asking me. I hope you found that helpful. All right. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get to the body of the things today. And we're going to start today with the title question. The first question today comes to us from William Ceyrolles, who writes, "Hi, John. I can't say I've been following you since the AMC days, but I've been a huge fan for the past 6 months or so." Oh, thank you so much, William. I appreciate that. My question is, with your knowledge of all the movie projects that have started in some fashion, but for one reason or another never made it, what one movie would you rescue and be brought back into production? Thanks a lot for the question, William. Yeah, like I talked on the podcast maybe a week ago, about how, look, 9 out of 10 films that get started, not in front of the cameras, but at least start getting developed, like they get some writers or a producer and a star attaches and all that kind of stuff. But 9 out of 10 of them never make it to the big screen. Some get really far into the pre-production and then kind of get canceled at the last minute. And there are a number of infamous film projects over the years that I think a lot of people wish would have happened, but never actually came about or never came to fruition. So I'm going to mention a couple of them. I'm sure you guys jump into the comments section, start mentioning some films that you think would belong on a list like that. So first of all, there's a whole bunch of films. These are not the films. I've got one film in particular to answer your question. Which film would I bring back to life? I've got one, but I'm going to save that for last. Okay. There are a couple of them that come to mind. One of them, which I think is one of the most fascinating movie ideas here. I'm going to cover up my face for a second here, but was Darren Aronofsky's Batman Year One. Now, of course, Year One is the comic book that was done by Frank Miller, who did, he wrote 300 and The Dark Knight Returns and stuff like that. So there's this graphic novel called Batman Year One, and it's great. And Darren Aronofsky, an Oscar caliber director who does a lot of artistic kind of films, like Black Swan was just amazing if you haven't seen it. But anyway, Darren Aronofsky was attached to do Batman, and his vision of Batman Year One was to kind of even go against a lot of what was in the graphic novel, but he wanted to make it real gritty. Like, if you think the Christopher Nolan Batman films were gritty, they weren't nothing compared to what Darren Aronofsky was going to do with Batman. I mean, he was going to tear Batman down to his core. He basically described it as Taxi Driver meets Batman. He was going to be a modern day Travis Bickle in Gotham, like real street level violence and, all that kind of stuff. He was going to go really far in that direction. Ultimately, the project never got put together. but Warner Brothers liked Aronofsky's idea about making it darker and grittier, getting away from the TV show Batman feel that the other Batman films had started to feel like, with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. Anyway, Warner Brothers liked Aronofsky's direction and which way he was going. So a lot of the elements that were going to be a part of the Aronofsky Batman Year One did find their way into the Christopher Nolan Batman films, which were great. And so the Nolan Batman films were a little bit lighter than Aronofsky's would have been, but that's a film that I think would have been really, really great. Another film, and I think if you talk to a lot of film historians, they'll all say this is the one film that really should have got made. And it's by Stanley Kubrick, who a lot of people think might have been the greatest filmmaker of all time. Now, I think the greatest filmmaker of all time is Steven Spielberg, but Steven Spielberg thinks Stanley Kubrick was the best filmmaker of all time. So you got to give that a lot of consideration. But anyway, Stanley Kubrick, he was working on this film for years called Napoleon, based on the historical figure Napoleon. And Stanley Kubrick said, this is going to be the greatest movie of all time. That's what Stanley Kubrick said. And he was a little biased because it was his movie, of course, but he was working incredibly hard on getting this Napoleon movie put together. And then what happened, I believe another studio, like in 1970, put out Waterloo. I think that was the name of the movie. And Waterloo didn't do great at the box office. And as Stanley Kubrick was getting this movie together, it was getting more and more and more expensive. Like, it was going to be a ridiculously expensive movie. Some commentators and historians say it would have been the most expensive movie of all time at the time. And the studio saw that Waterloo didn't do so good, and now they're thinking, do we really want to do a historical period piece with risking all this money and blah, 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 and eventually the plug got pulled. And Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon never saw the light of day and never actually got made, which is really too bad that happens. Let's see. Another one that a lot of people like to point to and mention, and going back into the superhero genre, is George Miller's. Yes, Mad Max's own George Miller. He was this close to starting shooting his Justice League movie. Yes, before there was Zack Snyder, before there was Man of Steel, whatever, there was George Miller's, and this is not 50 years ago. This is just not too awful long ago. George Miller was trying to do a Justice League movie with, at the time, an actor nobody had ever heard of. His name was Armie Hammer, that nobody had heard of yet because The Social Network hadn't come out. But he had cast this guy, Armie Hammer, to play the new Batman, a young version of Batman, and they were going to have Green Lantern and Superman and Wonder Woman and all this kind of stuff. And they were well into pre-production. All the costumes were designed. The cast was already rehearsing together. They were having cast parties, and they were like breaths away from shooting that movie. Now, why didn't it happen? There's a number of reasons that went around, and like there were some cold feet. Warner Brothers decided they had some other plans for it. Christopher Nolan was not happy with them trying to do another version of Batman on screen while his Batman movies were still going on. So that played a part in the consideration as well. But that George Miller movie never actually got made. So there's that as well. What were some of the, I made a list here. Gladiator 2. Was one. Yeah, they had this idea for Gladiator 2 that was going to be absolutely bonkers and go way out in left field, so that never happened. Jodorowsky's Dune is one that a lot of people were excited about and wanted to see. So, and another one, Guillermo del Toro. And no, not Hellboy 3. But Guillermo del Toro was going to do a movie version of the novel of At the Mountains of Madness. And that came really close, and then it fell apart, so that didn't happen. But what is the one film that never got made that if I had the power, if I had the power to bring one movie back and to actually get it done and get it made, I would make some changes, but get it done and get it made. I don't know if you guys want to take a guess as to what it is, but here it comes. The one I really think should have got done and should have got made was Halo. Halo was a movie they should have done 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Halo is a movie they totally should have done. This is a movie that should have got done. And I mean, so what you had Peter Jackson was producing it. And I always thought Peter Jackson didn't believe in the film. Because I always made the argument that if Peter Jackson really believed in Halo and he was as passionate for it as he was saying, remember, he wasn't doing The Hobbit at the time. Guillermo del Toro was going to be directing The Hobbit. I thought if Peter Jackson really believed in it, he would direct it himself. And he was never willing to direct the Halo film himself. Instead, he went out and got Neil Blomkamp, who nobody had ever heard of yet. Nobody had ever heard of yet, really. This guy who had never directed anything. Remember, District 9 had not come out yet. Of course, Blomkamp eventually went on and did District 9, but District 9 never come out yet. And all the studios were like, wait a minute. This guy, Neil Blomkamp, that Peter Jackson has handpicked to direct Halo, has never worked on a major motion picture in any capacity ever in his life. He was never an assistant director. He was never an editor on a major film. He was never a coffee boy on a major film. He'd done some of his own short films, but he's never worked one day on a big, major, huge blockbuster film ever in his life. And the studios were like, pass. And the studios dropped out. And then Peter Jackson said, don't worry, I'm already talking to other studios. I'm going to get this picked up. And it never got picked up. And eventually the project died. And District 9 came out, and what Blomkamp did with District 9 was amazing, was great. But then he started to do some more studio-like films, and they all fell apart. Like, I thought Elysium was terrible. And then what's that one he just made with the robot? Ziggy, Iffy, Miffy, Boogie, whatever the name of the movie was. Guys in the chat, I just had it in my head. What was the name of the movie he just did with the robot? I cannot remember the name of the movie he just did with the robot. Mentioned it in the Chappie. That's what it was. Sorry, it was Chappie. He did Chappie. That was terrible. And then Blomkamp was trying to get that Alien sequel done, and Ridley Scott came along and bumped him out of the way, and now he's not doing that Alien film. So Blomkamp is now doing his short films again, and they're amazing. If you haven't checked them out, look online for his new short film series, and it's really, really good. But that kind of fell apart. And I never understood why the studios, maybe even Microsoft themselves, look, Halo was a mega popular property. And I understand that video game movies do not have a history of success. I understand that. And that is something that would make you nervous. Totally get that. I do. But Halo was such a juggernaut of a powerful brand name. Everybody played Halo. And the nature of it as a huge sci-fi war epic, I just thought there was something really special they could have done. I thought they should have regrouped, got a new producer, got a new director, and moved forward, and instead they just let it go. And now Halo, I know there are still a lot of people that play Halo and different incarnations of Halo, but let's admit it, Halo is not nearly as popular as it once was. So I just don't know that that's a movie that's ever going to get made anymore. So anyway, to answer the big question, the one film that I would pull out of development hell that never got made and make it is Halo. All right. Thanks a lot for the question, man. Spent a lot of time on that. We'll zip through the next few ones. The next question comes to us all the way from Jay Pinkston, who writes, hey, John, loving the new podcast and your honest perspective on all things movie. Thank you so much, Jay. Kevin Feige said Civil War will be the end of the Captain America trilogy, and it really seems that Marvel's non-Avengers franchises end after 3 films. Which of the 3 big hitters do you think deserves a 4th film? Iron Man, Captain America, or Thor? Well, there's no right or wrong answer here because everybody's going to have a different opinion on this, so that's fine. But if you're asking me, which one, if I could press a button, I'd say one Part 4 movie would go into production. Thor Part 4, Iron Man 4, or Captain America 4. Which one would I do? Well, it's unfair to Thor because we haven't seen Thor Ragnarok yet. It looks great, but we haven't seen it yet. So let's take Thor out of the equation for now. So then it comes down to Iron Man and Captain America. To me, just from my point of view, it's no contest. It's Captain America. To me, don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed the Iron Man movies. I do. I love the Iron Man character. Love his Tony Stark. Love him. But to me, there's more you can do with Captain America. Captain America, to me, is the more as they've portrayed him, and as the Russo brothers especially have been using him lately, and as Chris Evans playing him, there's so much more richness and depth to that character in Captain America that you can do. Like, you can make an action film, you can make a political thriller, there's so much you can do. And really, Captain America has become the moral compass for the entire MCU. Like, and I know there are some people who sided with Iron Man in the Civil War movie, but Captain America, by the end of that movie, it was proof Captain America was right. Captain America was right. And he's kind of like the moral compass, but he's not perfect. He struggles to find that, that ethical, that moral North Star. But the difference between him and every other character is he thinks it matters. Captain America thinks finding the moral North Star is important and is worth wrestling with and worth fighting over and worth doing whatever journey you need to go through to find that moral North Star. Captain America is the character who thinks you need to find it. And then once he finds it, nothing will deter him from it. Not self-gain, not whatever for anybody else. Nothing will deter Captain America once, at this version of Captain America, once he believes he's found that moral North Star, he'll go with it. If it means cutting off his own leg, that's what he'll do. And when you have that kind of a character, you can do funnier things with Iron Man. You can maybe do some more exciting things with Iron Man, but there's something really interesting on screen when you get a character that can do something like that. So I would say Captain America. Thanks a lot for the question, man. But which one would you like to see part 4? Jump into the comment section and leave your thoughts. All right, let's move on now to question number 3. And question number 3 today comes to us from Michael Williams, who writes, my question is, do you think that Flashpoint was originally planned as the second Flash film? The solo Flash film was originally planned to release early next year, and it looks like Flashpoint will not roll around until at least 2020 or 2021. I also think that with criticisms to the DCEU, it would be too easy for WB to use Flashpoint to possibly fix what fans and critics view as problems with the cinematic universe. Interesting question. And here, I'll be honest with you. When I heard officially, like at Comic-Con, it became 100% official. Well, I mean, nothing with DC is official till it comes out in theaters, because we've heard tons of movies that are officially coming that then get scrapped. But when I heard that they were doing Flashpoint, I thought the one word that popped into my head was genius. Absolute genius. And here's why. Because in Flashpoint, Warner Brothers gives themselves a mechanism if they choose to use it. Remember, Flashpoint may never happen. They may not. Doesn't matter that they announced it. They announce and pull titles all the time. But by announcing Flashpoint, what Warner Brothers, in my opinion, has done, they have brilliantly built into the future a mechanism for themselves if they choose to alter the direction of their overall universe. They have bought themselves a flexibility in their storytelling over the next couple of years that few studios really have without consequence. Because look, we know that recently, Warner Brothers, they have reevaluated their strategy, and obviously a lot of films that were announced, they're pulled now, they've reset up a new thing, they've got a new plan. And I admire that greatly, because I've said this before in another podcast, it's not the teams that go into the game with the best game plan that win championships. It's the teams that go into halftime and make adjustments, the right adjustments. Those are the teams that win championships. And what I think we've seen is that Warner Brothers has wisely taken a step back. It wasn't reactionary. It's not like they read one critic review and then they go, oh, let's change all of our plans. And Warner Brothers has been guilty of being reactionary in the past. But I believe Warner Brothers has fixed that problem. And I don't believe they're being reactionary now. Now I think they're saying we have a larger sample size. We've got, we have Man of Steel that's out. We have Suicide Squad that's out. We have Batman versus Superman that's out. Now this is before Wonder Woman came out. And they have a larger sample size. Now it's not reactionary. Now it's evaluation. And Warner Brothers stepped back and said, you know what? There's some things we think we need to alter with our direction here to get us onto the course that we want to be on. They did some leadership shakeups. They did some, philosophy shakeups. They changed some of their movie projects. And I think they've got a new plan. And I think they really believe in their plan. And then Wonder Woman came out and was a success and it's emboldened them even more. So now you have a Warner Brothers company that has a new plan. They got a new direction. And remember this, I think this is very key and important. This is not a throwaway detail. This next thing is a very key important thing. And I mentioned all the time, remember a while ago, a couple of the Warner Brothers execs said, we are going to take a breath. We're going to take a step back and take a breath until after Justice League comes out, and we're going to see where we're at, and we're going to adjust accordingly. Brilliant. And I believe that Flashpoint is a direct result of that philosophy. Because by putting Flashpoint into place, what Warner Brothers has brilliantly done here is that if, let's say, they get past Justice League, they get to see how the audience reacts, and they get to see how it all worked out, and they got to see what the finished product was. Any new adjustments they want to make, whether it's a small adjustment, you can make a small adjustment with Flashpoint. Or if you want to make a wholesale huge adjustment, you can do both with Flashpoint. There's so much you can do with Flashpoint. A lot of people speculating, will Flashpoint be how they move Ben Affleck out of being Batman? Maybe, maybe not. Will Flashpoint be how they get a new Superman? God, I hope not, but maybe, maybe not. Is Flashpoint how they just reset the entire DCEU? Maybe, maybe not. Is Flashpoint how they just decide to use the importance of the Lois Lane character? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Warner Brothers can do anything, a tiny adjustment or a huge adjustment. So by putting Flashpoint on the schedule, and it's that far off, they can see how Justice League plays out and then use Flashpoint however they feel they need to use it. Like I said, from a strategy point of view and from a content point of view, I think this was brilliant. I think it was absolutely brilliant. Now we just got to wait and see how Justice League turns out. And hopefully it's as amazing as the trailer itself. All right, let's move on to the next question here. Sorry, I'm taking extra time here today, guys. Sorry about that. The next question today comes to us from Bryan Kruse, who writes, I enjoyed the Hobbit films, but let's be honest, it's a very divisive trilogy. Would the films have been better received if they went the Lord of the Rings route and used a lot more practical effects and costumes? One of my favorite things about Lord of the Rings is most of the orcs were just people in costumes and makeup, while in The Hobbit, they used almost all CGI. They just didn't feel like orcs. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Brian. First of all, I'll disagree with you. I think the visual effects, for the most part, in the Hobbit films look great. I think they did. But no. If they just use people in costume instead of CGI, that would not have changed the reception of the films. The problems with The Hobbit, and I like the Hobbit movies, I do. But they were massive step downs from the Lord of the Rings films. And it wasn't because they used CGI here instead of a guy in an orc costume. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the story. The way they told the story and the way they structured the thing. The fact that they turned what should have probably been one movie, what was okay to do as two movies, but then at the last minute, they stretched it out into 3 films and they made a trilogy out of a fairly small book. And that just caused all sorts of narrative problems and character problems. And it was all about story, function, narrative, and character. Those were the problems with the film. Those were the things that needed to be fixed. Like, while the third Hobbit film was this action-packed extravaganza, problem was it felt like such an incomplete movie. Movies need to have, I don't want to make it sound like every movie has to follow a formula, but movies need beginnings, middles, and ends. The third Hobbit film was just all end. From the beginning of the third Hobbit film to the end of it, it was all climax. It was the climax of things that had happened before. But even in part 3s, you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And they didn't. And that soured the whole movie for me. Again, there was enough fun involved with it, and I liked some of the things they did. The Thorin Oakenshield character was one of my favorite characters of the year, but still, they had a lot of narrative problems. So no, you may like or not like the CGI that they used in The Hobbit, and that's fine. That's true. But the core problems of the Hobbit films that turned off a lot of the fans and turned off a lot of the critics wasn't the CGI. It was story. It was script. It was structure. It was character. Those are the reasons and the things that could have saved The Hobbit, not putting a guy in an orc costume. I mean, that's just my opinion. You may see it differently, and that's totally great. That's the most wonderful thing about films. We can have different opinions, but that is mine. All right, let's move on to the 5th question. And the fifth question today comes to us from Outlaw Noah, who writes, "Hey John, big fan since the early AMC days and new Patreon supporter. Thank you so much, Outlaw. Anyway, my question is about the Oscar chances for Detroit. I feel like Kathryn Bigalow should be in the running for a Best Director nod, and I also believe that Will Poulter should be up for a Best Supporting Actor nod as well. But with the poor box office performance and early release date, do you think Detroit has any chance of getting any nominations?" All right, thanks a lot for the question, Outlaw. Let's look at this. First of all, if you haven't seen Detroit, you should. Powerful film. Powerful film. And I totally agree. Kathryn Bigalow should be in the running for a nomination. We'll have to see what all the other films that come out this year. And Will Poulter, if the Oscars were held tomorrow, there's only two names that I would say are automatic locks for nominations for Best Supporting Actor. Patrick Stewart for Logan and Will Poulter for Detroit. Will Poulter is amazing. And I've never been a big Will Poulter fan. He impressed me and surprised me a lot in this movie. Anyway. But the question is, look, I think it came out in its wide release, it made $8 million worldwide, or $8 million on its opening weekend of wide release opening. Because it opened limited in July. So it officially opened in July, but its first wide release weekend was in August and made like $8 million, which is terrible by a lot of standards. So the question is, can a movie be considered, or would it be considered for Oscars if it made so little money? Well, it makes no money. Like honestly, the Oscar voters don't care if a movie made money or not. They just don't. I mean, let's look at a couple of recent examples. Let's look at The Artist. Remember the black and white film that they just did a couple years ago? Won Best Picture. Was not only nominated, it freaking won Best Picture. All right. That movie on its opening weekend, its wide release opening weekend, whereas Detroit made $8 million, The Artist made $1 to $2 million. $1 to $2 million opening weekend. Let's look at last year. Last year, for heaven's sakes, the movie that did win Best Picture, Moonlight. I know there are probably still some people out there that think La La Land won, but no, La La Land did not win. Moonlight won Best Picture last year. It made like $1 point something million, maybe $2 million on its opening wide release weekend. Now, once the awards buzz started going and they put the movie in wider release and put it in more theaters, it actually ended up making like 30 or 40 or $50 million, something like that. But that was after, all the awards buzz started going. So no, I mean, really, as a matter of fact, one of the criticisms that people have had of the Oscars over the years is that they always nominate movies that nobody's seen. So like, it's not a problem for the Academy to nominate films just because it didn't make any money. They don't care whether or not a movie made money. Hollywood does, but the Oscars don't. The Oscars only cares if it's a great movie, and if it deserves it, it doesn't matter if it made $2 million, doesn't matter if it made $200 million. We're going to nominate it. So, no, I honestly don't think that the fact that it made so little money, and remember, Boyhood got tons of Academy Award nominations, and it was released earlier in the year, too. So, I don't think either of those are going to hurt its chances. What might hurt Detroit's chances is how many other great Oscar caliber films come out in Oscar season. That's going to be the problem that Detroit faces. Not how much money does it make or when it was released, but rather how many other big, high-profile Oscar contender films come out and how well they do. That's going to be the big problem. All right, let's move on to the final email question of the day, and then we will go over to the live chat board. The final email question today comes to us from Sunny Bros Films, who writes, "Hey, John, I surprisingly haven't followed you since your Man of Steel review, but I absolutely love the channel. Thank you so much. You made it clear that Man of Steel to you is a masterpiece and a great film. I love it as well, but not quite as much as you. My question is, what are your favorite aspects of Man of Steel that make you love it so much?" I can talk Man of Steel all day. I love Man of Steel. Look, here's what it is to me. And I won't spend much time on this because I've talked about this before, but to me, the heart of Man of Steel is the brilliance. I remember we were talking about the weaknesses of the Hobbit film, narrative structure, character. The strengths of Man of Steel are narrative structure and character. You have this guy, and they portray it and execute it so perfectly, who grows up different and struggles as a young man, as a child even. Then he finds out he is so radically alien. And I don't mean that in the literal sense alien, although he is literally an alien, but I mean that in the metaphorical sense. He grows up feeling so alien to his own environment. And then later he finds out he has what his true origins are. First of all, before he even finds out his true origins, he finds out from his father that he's not of this world. And his father dies protecting him. Like, he's Superman. I mean, he's not Superman yet, but he's Superman. And somebody dies, loves him so much, and believes in protecting him so much that his father, Jonathan Kent, some people talk crap about that tornado scene. Shut the fuck up. I mean, it's all subjective. If you don't like it, that's cool. But I'm just jokingly saying, shut the fuck up. That scene is awesome. That scene is awesome. Because what you got a man, Jonathan Kent, played by Kevin Costner, right? That he loves his son so much that he would rather die than have Clark risk exposing himself and what he can do to save him. Remember, Clark wouldn't have died if he came over and saved him. His son would have still been alive, but he loved his son so much. He thought it was so important that until Clark was ready, his secret needed to be kept safe, and he was willing to die for that, and he did die for it. Like, to me, that moment of the film is so profound, and I believe so many people miss the beauty of that scene and the beauty of that moment and the beauty of that character. Because there's a dog, and they get totally distracted by that. Look at the core of that scene, man. But then you move on from that. So now you've got this character who embarks on a worldwide quest to, number one, honor his father's wishes to keep himself hidden until he's ready. But number two, trying to find out more about his origins. He starts going all over the world trying to find out about himself. Then when he does finally find out about himself, now he's got these two competing father figures. He's got Jor-El. Where's Jor-El here? He's got Jor-El telling him, you're the savior of humankind. You'll be their guiding light. You will lead this world. You're not just going to be a hero to the world. You're going to lead the world, Kal-El. You're going to lead them. You're going to lead them, Kal-El, into a brighter, better future. Look how good that face looks. You're going to lead them in a brighter, better future, Kal-El. You're going to do all that. So, on the one hand, you've got Jor-El speaking of him as a messiah. You've got his father, Jonathan Kent, saying your goal is to be a good man. Use your powers as a good man, but be a good man at its core. And now you got Kal-El, who is struggling, trying to find the balance between those two wise, loving father figures, trying to do that. And then all of a sudden, he's Superman. Like that. He's Superman for a day. He's Superman for a day. And then an alien invasion of Kryptonian maniacs show up. And how does he's still figuring out what does it mean to be me. And he has to figure it out in the fire of combat. He has to figure out in the fire of conflict. And I could go on and on about Man of Steel all fucking day. I could go on about it all day. But I will spare you guys anymore. Just watch the damn movie again. It's brilliant. Man of Steel is freaking brilliant. I don't care what anybody says. Okay, now we will get to the point where I will go on to take your guys. For those of you who are watching live, I'm going to take your live questions in the chat board. Jump on over to the chat board if you're in there right now. Start firing off questions. I will pull them out. I will pull out questions, and we will go from there. Let's see. Haskell 420 says, John, we are more than halfway through the movie year. Is Logan still the best film of the year? And does Jackman and Stewart still deserve the Best Actor and Supporting Actor nomination? Look, again, I said that we've got a lot of other films still to come this year. It's premature to say, but were the Oscars to be held tomorrow, yes, Logan should be nominated for and win Best Picture. Hugh Jackman should at least be nominated for Best Actor, and Patrick Stewart should automatically be nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Again, I'm saying that's if the Oscars were tomorrow. We got a lot of other films to come out later this year. Maybe that'll still be the case by the time they all come out, and maybe it won't be. But for now, yes, Logan, to me, is not just the best comic book movie of the year, not a Marvel film, not a DC film, a Fox film, is the best comic book movie of the year. It's the best movie of the year overall to me still. Anyway, let's see. Some people saying, Evan is saying the tornado scene is ridiculous. That's cool if that's your perspective, man. I just think you're missing it. I think you're just being, ooh, shiny. I think you're being distracted by the wrong things, and you're missing out on like one of the best scenes of the movie. Let's see here. Question. Gears of War movie interests you with Dave Bautista as the lead? No, I love Dave. I love Dave. You know, I've had Dave in my studio. I've gotten together with Dave on several occasions. Dave was one of the first celebrities to get involved and be a part of that 24-hour marathon that I did a couple years ago. And he was the first guy to jump on with me and do that. I love Dave. But Dave cannot carry a movie on his own. And you know who would be the first one to tell you that? Is Dave. Dave will be the first guy to tell you that. Dave is evolving himself in small supporting roles. That's how he's dealing with it. And he's getting better, and he's getting better, and he's getting better. I don't think Dave's in a position yet to like put an entire film on his shoulders and lead a film. I don't think he's ready for that. I don't think that would be good for him. I think the way he is managing his career is fantastic. And he's got so much success understanding his limitations and understanding his strengths and playing to them accordingly while trying to improve himself at the same time. And hopefully in a couple of years, he will be in a place where he can lead a film, but he's not there yet. So I wouldn't be down for that. Don't get me wrong. I would be really happy for Dave if he did land a leading role like that, but I just don't see that happening right now. Let's see. Grandmaster Gravity says, what is your favorite color? I think blue. I think blue is fun. But you know what's funny? In a lot of my design elements, I like to use red, which is maybe why I liked being at AMC so much. But yeah, I like red. Red's pretty cool. I have a lot of red and stuff. But I think ultimately, maybe it's my eye color. It's blue. Ben on Adventure says, hey, why not get Henry Cavill on your show? Oh, great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Okay, I'm not meaning to tease you. Well, I'm teasing you a little bit. I'm just teasing you a little bit, dude. But this is the thing that's hilarious. I would get like people like the Russo brothers would come into studio when I was doing shows, and I would have the directors of Civil War and Avengers Infinity War. They would come into my studio. They came into my studio a couple times. Chris Pratt and Kevin Feige came into studio, and I would get these people going, well, why don't you let Ben Affleck come in? Why don't you let Henry Cavill come in? Why don't you let why don't you let the DC people come in? And I'm like, you don't think I would love to have those guys in my studio? You don't think they don't, it's not a matter of me just picking up the phone and calling them. Look, let's get this clear. I am a fucking nobody. See this guy here? I am a fucking nobody. So the idea that I could just pick up the phone and go, hey, yeah, Jeff Johns, why don't you grab Ben and Henry and why don't you come on down here and hang out in the studio for a day? I know you've been dying to come down. I'm going to let you come to my studio. No, that is not how it happens. That's not how it happens at all. Believe me, I tried. And I got close once. I never revealed this before, but some of you who've been watching me for some period of time, remember there was a time where I said, I've got somebody from DC Films that we're working on to come in. It'll be hopefully in the next few months. We're getting this sorted out. It was Zack Snyder. And I've spoken with Zack Snyder a number of times. You guys know that. And I was working really hard to get Zack Snyder in, but the schedules just never worked, and we were never able to get him in. And so, like, I would always get people, why don't you get this guy? Why don't you get this guy? Because I'm a nobody, and nobodies can't just pick up the phone and say, hey, can you come down to my studio? It doesn't quite work like that. Believe me, I'm a massive fan of Henry Cavill. You know, I think he's the best Superman we've ever had. I've had a chance to interview and hang out with Henry a couple of times on, promotional events and marketing events and things like that. But it's not like I can just pick up the phone, and I don't have him on speed dial. Let's put it that way. Okay, let's see. Okay, Mr. Donio writes, hey, John, will the Green Lantern be in Justice League? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think Green Lantern will be in Justice League. Mostly because the principal photography was done shooting. And I think there's no way they could have kept that secret. I think we would have known by now. I think we would have heard about it by now. We would have heard casting, or we would have heard something. So I'm not willing to bet money on that, because speaking of Henry Cavill, he has put out a lot of tweets and social media stuff teasing Green Lantern. So that might be misdirection. It probably is misdirection. Or it could be something real. Maybe he shows up. If I had to put it on a 0 to 100% chance that Green Lantern shows up in Justice League, I'll go as high as 30%. So still the answer is no, I don't think he will. But 30% that there's a chance that he shows up there. Let's see. MMM writes, John, what are your thoughts on the Mother trailer? Bonkers. Have you guys seen that new trailer for Mother with Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence? Bonkers. Totally bonkers. I am completely obsessed with this movie now. I cannot wait to see what kind of strange freaking madness they do. And I believe it's being directed by the aforementioned Aronofsky, which I think makes it pretty interesting and fascinating. All right, let me take just a couple more here. Hey, John, what do you think of James Marsden as Green Lantern? I love James Marsden. I think this is a dude. There are a couple people. Taylor Kitsch is one of them. James Marsden is another one of them. These really good, talented actors who felt like they were on the cusp of breaking into that A-list movie star status. And for whatever reason, they never did. With Taylor Kitsch, I believe it's because he had too many. The movies he was in just failed too much. I mean, he was Gambit and X-Men. I thought he was a pretty good Gambit, to be honest with you, in that Wolverine movie. But, I mean, it was a bad movie. Then he was in John Carter. I love John Carter, and I thought he was great in the movie, but the movie lost Disney a lot of money. So I think and then he was in Battleship, which was a miserable failure of a film. But I believe Taylor Kitsch could have been a big A-list star. I think the same thing of James Marsden, and I don't know why he never broke through. Maybe it's because of the way the X-Men films treated his Cyclops character. As much as I love the X-Men films, especially X-Men 1, X-Men 2, I got to admit, they were not very kind to the Cyclops character. They were not very kind to James Marsden. But Marsden is a terrific talent. I'd be all for him as Green Lantern. Sure, he wouldn't be my first pick, but if they announced tomorrow that he was going to play Green Lantern, I would be down for that. Let's see. Last question of the day. Most overlooked movie of 2017 so far. Oh, that's a good question, man. That's a good question. I'd have to think about that. That's not one I can answer off the top of my head. I'd have to think about that. So I will think about that. Anyway, that'll do it for me for this round, guys. Hey, I'm going to let you guys know that for the Patreon supporters, we started a John Campea Podcast Facebook group for people who are supporters on the Patreon. And if you are a Patreon supporter, at least of the supporter level or the team level, we have a live Q&A at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. It's going to be really small and intimate. It's just going to be us. I'm going to be on video on the YouTube channel, or on the Facebook channel, I should say, and interacting with all of the Patreon supporters, at least those of the right level. And it's probably going to be like 30 or 40 of us in there. But if you are a Patreon supporter, make sure you come over to the John Campea Facebook group later today at 5 o'clock. And we're going to have like maybe a full hour of just interacting and chatting and talking movies, talking TV, talking production, talking blogging, talking YouTubing, whatever you guys want to talk about. We're going to talk about. I'm really excited about doing this. I'm super stoked. And don't forget, a little bit later today, I've got my best trilogies, my top 5 trilogies video coming. I also got a video coming later tonight of my review of the new Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson movie, The Hitman's Bodyguard. That goes up late tonight. Keep your eyes open for it if you're up late. Hey guys, while you're here, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. I got a lot of videos that come out every single day. And also make sure you're following me on social media. You can follow me on Twitter at John Campea. Just follow me there. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. My name is John Campea, and until the next hallowed wonderful opportunity to speak with you guys, bye-bye.